Okay, so you've had quite a few talks about the brain, so I thought I'd talk about a plant. So it's a plant that some of you may have come in contact with, or may not have done. I'm not going to ask any questions. So, myths and legends. What is the cannabis plant? So that's the important thing. So everyone talks about it. So it's been used to treat a number of diseases over the years, including multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, neuropathic pain, etc. And as you can see from a nice picture of me during my PhD, I have been around the plant quite a bit. So there are about 500 components to the cannabis plant. So these are compounds that are found in it, and 100 of these are unique. So these are called phytocannabinoids. So these are plant-based cannabinoids. And the two ones that most of you all have heard about and most have come in contact with are THC, which is delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, which is why everyone calls it THC. And that's psychoactive. So this is a compound that's psychoactive. This gets you high. This gets that sort of thing that people who are into recreational cannabis, that's what they're looking for. And you have CBD, so that's again another one, that's cannabidiol, and that's the guy you will have heard of probably more based in the clinic, and that's not psychoactive. There's lots of papers that show the lack of psychoactivity there. So it's only recent history that people have really been talking about it for epilepsy. However, it has been used for quite a few years. So you're looking about 5,000 years in traditional Chinese medicine, cannabis has been used, mainly for rheumatism, malaria, and poor memory. However, it then transferred through into traditional Indian medicine called Ayurvedic medicine. So this was then used from about 1000 BC. And then someone from Limerick travelled all the way over to India, William O'Shaughnessy, and he then came back in the 1800s, and he brought cannabis back to Western medicine. So he was the person who is famous throughout the world of cannabinoids. So anyone that studied cannabinoids will know him. So even when I go on holiday, I take photos of William O'Shaughnessy. So that's my visit to Barcelona. There's a nice place there, and you can find stuff about him in Barcelona even. So wherever you go, William O'Shaughnessy is well known. And then more recently, Canada is one of the first countries as a whole to start regulating medicinal cannabis. So what do I mean by medicinal cannabis? So there's a medicinal cannabis has been used in a legal sense. So you've got legal cannabis in America, where you have dispensaries, and these are used to dispense what is considered medical cannabis. And you've got multiple strains that are available for different diseases. So these are called chemotype 1 strains, so they're high in THC. These ones will get you high. They have interesting names like Trainwreck and White Widow, so you can tell that they are definitely there to get you high. Then you've got type 2 and type 3 strains. So type 2 here, it's much more CBD based. It's approximately a 1-to-1 ratio of THC and CBD. And then you've got the type 3. So the type 3 is the high CBD containing ones. And that's including Charlotte's Web. So Charlotte's Web is one that most of you may have heard of. It was developed for a girl called Charlotte over in America who has Dravet syndrome. So this one here is a really high CBD to low THC ratio. And this has been tested. So here you can see, so you've got, again, the chemotype 1, 2, and 3. And you can see along the bottom here, this is the THC containing, and you can get a really wide variety of THC containing CBDs in the chemotype 1s. The 2s, this is approximately a 1-to-1 ratio of CBD and THC. And then going into the type 3s here, you can see really are CBD containing with a little bit of THC. But again, notice this variability here. And this is the variability I want to go through. So this is the ratios, and this is where a number of these strains of cannabis have been tested in multiple sites, and importantly from multiple growers. And this is the growers that I want to talk about. So again, Charlotte's Web. You're looking really for a strain that's down here, and that's in the high CBD, low THC range. However, if you notice, there's two little dots here and here. And this is showing that you do get a massive variety in the amount of THC and CBD found within the strains, depending on the grower. So why is this? You'd have thought the same name, the same products produced each time. Well, cannabis is like tea. So this might be a weird statement for most of you. I will explain. So this is a cup of tea. Everyone has a cup of tea they like. You've got Barry's and Lions. I'm not going to judge anyone here. But it's all grown from the same plants. These are plants. If you look here, You've got a nice valley, it's very picturesque. What I see is multiple growing conditions. So you can see you've got bits at the top of the valley, the bottom of the valley, bits of more sunshine, less sunshine. So you've got sunshine can affect the taste of your tea. The wind can affect, so a change in wind. So you get a thing called first flush Darjeeling, which is the first tea after a summer wind. It's a very nice tea, apparently, although far too expensive. Then you've got humidity. That will affect the levels of the flavour of your tea, the temperature it's grown at, and the soil conditions. All these things combine to change the flavour of the tea that's produced. And the same is with cannabinoids. Now, with tea, they have people called tea tasters, which is a job I've looked into. So you've got people that go along and taste all these varieties of tea from all the growing conditions. And you can see this is quite an old photo, still the same today. So you still have people called tea tasters, and they still will sit there and taste tea. And it's this variability that these people are picking up to blend together, so you always have the same cup of tea every time. You put the bag in hot water, you will get that same flavour. But that's because of the variety and growing conditions that your tea is produced in, and the cannabis is not any different. It will change. So that's why we saw that variability, and that's why it's so important to have a consistent grow and really trust the person that's produced it for you. People know, people have discovered this. The growers, particularly producing street cannabis, have discovered that growing conditions and breeding of plants can increase the THC, and THC is what people are after for recreational cannabis. So street cannabis in the US has increased significantly the amount of THC that is contained within it. However, the CBD levels haven't really changed, at least in street cannabis. And then in England, there was another so this is from various seizures of cannabis in 2005. You can see here that resin, so that's sort of the resiny compound that people will know. There's still sort of a 50-50 THC CBD. Leaf, so that's sort of the leaf matter. And then bud, which is the dried flowers. And you can see here, there's a massive amount of THC within the dried flowers. So this sort of replicates the data seen around this sort of part of the graph here. So you really are getting a high level of THC in a lot of street cannabis, which is not sort of something we're looking for. So you go to the shops, you see CBD oil, and it has a number on the front. It says, in this bottle, there will be this amount of CBD. So you think, but it must be regulated. You must know about this. Well, someone has actually tested in this paper up here. They've tested it. So in the oil, so this is an oil extract. So you put the cannabis in an oil. So here, I'll have to explain this graph to you. So in the blue, this is approximately what is said on the bottle, and that's a 10% variance. And 10% is a big difference. With a quarter of them, there's a lot less than advertised, and a quarter, there's a lot more. So you really do see quite a variation in the oils. You then have tinctures. So tinctures are ethanol extracts. So things like, so a 40% ethanol would be vodka, for example. So you can use tinctures to make an extract of the cannabis. And again, you can see a massive variability. So again, about a third have approximately the same as labelled, a third have a lot less, and a third have a lot more. So cannabinoids, they love oil, they love ethanol, they will absorb into it quite quickly. You also have vape liquids. So you can see these coming more and more onto the market where people think, okay, you can vaporize it. People will have been inhaling cannabis smoke for quite a while now. Surely the vapes are the next logical conclusion. However, if you look at this, with the currently available work, you've got approximately 12%. It's close to being what's advertised. A lot more is found in another 12%, but in 75%, 3/4 of those available for vapes are significantly less than that's what's advertised on the bottle, and these are from online dispensaries in the US. So these aren't great if you want to have that consistency that is needed, and that's the consistency that everyone is looking for. So these are unregulated, and that's the very important thing is they're not regulated. There's nothing to stop them. I think people will go onto this later, but it's not regulated. There's no one actually saying that this is going to be the same every time. But there is actually legislation out there. This is from the US, so you can see this nice thing up here. It's the Botanical Drug Development Guideline for Industry. The FDA have updated it a couple of times. So there is actually, they do mandate how to develop a drug based on a plant material for the treatment of various diseases, or just to develop the drug. Now, I wouldn't be doing a talk if I didn't sort of plug my own work. So this is some of my work from my PhD a few years ago now. So I looked at cannabis plant extracts and the use in seizures, in models of seizure. So I was privileged enough to use one of these cannabinoid extracts, which was controlled and was reproducible. And I had ones with THC and without THC. So everything else is the same, we just stripped the THC out. So in this particular model, so this is in a mouse model, and you've got a mild type of seizure, a moderate type of seizure, and a severe type of seizure. With THC, there was more animals actually had more animals had the severe seizures here than when no THC was present. So that would indicate THC isn't good. However, in a second model, there was no difference, whether there was THC or not. And this is just animal models. This is not the clinic, but it does show the variability in way that people will respond, or animals in this case, will respond to THC. And there is a massive, I'm not proud of these error bars, there is a massive variation in the response that everyone has to the THC and CBD. But what I also did was looked at the effects on motor function. So if you're going to have THC, it's psychoactive. It also is known to cause you to be a little bit sleepier. So what are the effects on motor function? So with THC, these bars here, so this is basically putting the mice, or the rats, sorry, in this case, putting the rats onto a static beam, onto a tightrope, and getting them to walk towards a nice box. So in the dark, which they like. So in here is where there's a THC, and then we're looking at only a 2% level of THC in these extracts, so really quite low. And a lot of these animals failed to finish the task, and it says, beat the time limit, which is 5 minutes. And this is because they actually fell asleep. So they were, even with 2%, they fell asleep. So I've got many hours of videos of rats asleep on a static beam, which was fun to watch. And then without the THC, so this is the THC's been stripped out, this effect was really, really reduced. So you didn't see that same sort of somnolence, that same sleepiness without the THC. So the THC, at least in this case, in the models, it doesn't appear to be necessary, but it does have side effects. This is the models. People will go, obviously, it needs to be studied much further to be able to draw any real conclusions at this stage, but this is just what we found up to date here. So I'm here sort of saying that THC doesn't work. Well, there's a lot of studies to show that it does. So each one of these green boxes is an animal study that's been done since 1974 was the first one on this list, that have worked and shown that THC is anticonvulsant. The red ones were shown it's actually made the seizures worse, so it's been proconvulsant. And the black where it's had no effect. So THC, although there is some good effects, there are some bad effects, or some will not be affected at all. So this is really showing the variability. CBD, on the other hand, again, the same parameters. It's mainly green with a few, so effective, a few non-effective. So this is sort of what we're working with. It's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of time to look at, to see where we're going in terms of potential combinations there. So, you find it as a supplement. You find it in, it's available. It's a supplement. It's unregulated, or at least CBD is. But can it affect your current medication? And this is an important thing to look at. So you spent a long time titrating to the right level of medication, to what you can tolerate, what works for you, and can it affect this? So this is a really big graph. So I'm going to actually just focus on this bit here. So this is a study done in America. This is part of an expanded access program looking at Epidiolex, so CBD. And all the people with CBD were also taking the concurrent medication. So Elizabeth Teal looked at the levels of clobazam. So it's a drug some of you may not know about. It's quite a strong anticonvulsant drug. And for the first person here, the level of clobazam that they were given each day stayed the same for the entire study. The level of CBD was actually stayed the same, however, it did increase in the bloodstream over the 8-week period of time. The clobazam itself didn't really change too much, but what you may notice is this here is the active metabolite. So this is, the body breaks down the clobazam into an active metabolite, and that active metabolite does have side effects associated with it. And the CBD, because it affects your liver enzymes, or can affect your liver enzymes, massively increase this metabolite. So it has the potential to increase the side effects associated with the clobazam. So it has the potential to cause drug-drug interactions, and that's the important thing here is the clinicians and pharmacists will understand this. It's, It's kind of like don't mess around with your drugs, but it's that sort of idea is CBD is not just inert, it can interact with your current medication. So just to conclude from all this, growing conditions will change the cannabis extracts produced. THC content of street cannabis is increasing. CBD oils are unregulated and can differ from the packaging, so you can't rely on the packaging for them. CBD plant extracts do work in models of seizure, at least in my hands and a number of other people's hands. And CBD can affect how your body handles your current medication, so it's important. I'd like to thank Professor Henschel, Mona, and the Future Neuro team, and Epilepsy Ireland, and all of you guys. Thank you.